house of a flower. To ask me is in vain, for who goes up your winding stair can ne'er come down again. You woke something up.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Spoop. I'm back to your regularly scheduled reviews. Today, we're going to talk about a movie I found on the streaming service that I reviewed last week. If you haven't seen that review, recommend you do. Something new from me. That streaming service is called Screenbox, and it's pretty interesting. So we're watching a movie called Dead Souls on Screenbox. As per normal on Let's Talk Spoop, we break things down into 6 separate categories. Those 6 separate categories are story, acting, music, atmosphere, look, and finally, creep. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Dead Souls on Screenbox. So it opens with creepy singing 17 years ago. Farmhouse. Somebody is using a rug to cover like a creepy looking summoning circle on the floor. The mother of a family of 5 complains of a stomachache and asks her daughter to watch their baby. The dad is working on something out in the garage. Turns out, bless you, Bea. Turns out that something in the garage that he is working on is some crosses. He then proceeds to murder their dog, and then start murdering the family after asking the lords, plural, for strength. He turns out to be a preacher, so it's kind of a weird thing to see. So the second child, the middle child, hides the youngest child in the basement to prevent the dad from murdering everybody. And thus, that's the end of the opening. It's actually a fairly brutal opening. Right when he gives up on finding his son, he decides to nail himself to a cross, and a cop, pretty inept cop, walks in and is like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then, cut to now, present day. We got this guy talking to his friend. They're both in high school. He's talking about, like, going to college and whatnot, getting away from his mom because his mom runs his life. And he gets a thing in the mail telling him that he has received property because he is obviously the child that survived the opening. So he decides to go look into the property because he didn't know anything about it because his mother, who was actually his mom's sister, never told him anything about his family. He didn't even know he was adopted. So he gets there, starts looking around the house with the help of a lawyer. The lawyer leaves him there, and then he finds this weird, random squatter who is surprisingly clean and hot for a girl who's been living in an abandoned house for an unknown period of time. And then it kind of... there's like possession going on. It's when he arrives in town, he gets accosted by the locals, of course, because obviously the locals all remember 17 years ago when his dad murdered a bunch of people. It's fairly standard, fairly straightforward. However, there's a part of the ending that I really appreciated. So after I finish the review, I'll talk about that and why I feel like this movie got a higher score due to the ending. So 4 out of 5 for story. Acting, it's not the best. The lawyer character seriously sounded like he was reading his lines like as he was saying. And there's actually a scene in it where he like pulls out his phone like he's reading a text message. I am 90% sure that he was just reading his lines directly off of his phone because that's how badly he delivered his lines. So acting, not great. 2 out of 5 for acting. It could be worse. Music is nothing really special to report, so 2.5 as per usual for movies that don't have special music. Atmosphere, pretty good. Despite the subpar acting, the build-up and drama was really well paced. So I give it a 4 out of 5 for atmosphere. Look, good. Decrepit house is decrepit. Gore was good and not excessive. So like they didn't like. So there's a scene in the opening where the dad straight up brains the son with a hammer, just whack. Which you don't really see a lot in movies, violence against children. So that was kind of cool. Wow, that's, don't take that out of context. Anyway, straight up brains the kid, and like it's not like this huge blood splatter or anything. It's like a reasonable amount of blood, so they didn't really go overboard with the gore, which I appreciated because they could have, because the blood effects weren't bad. So 3 out of 5 for look. And finally, Creep. It's good. There's some spooky ghosts and a few good jump scenes, and overall not bad. So 3 out of 5 for the creepiness factor, which, if I did my math correctly, which I might not have, we get a 3.1 skulls out of 5 for Dead Souls on Screambox. And now, pause for spoiler alert. Jeremiah, if you want to like put a spoiler across there. So the way this movie ends, they did something different than you normally see in horror films. It's like a fairly common trope in movies where like some supernatural creature comes back and murders a bunch of people, but then the guy that's the main character survives miraculously, and then they just kind of gloss over the fact that he has to explain like 50 dead bodies, right? Like, yeah, sure, dude, you survived the supernatural thing, but everybody's gonna think you did this, so you go in jail. This movie, because one of the characters in the movie is the cop from the beginning, when at the end, after everything is said and done, the main character, the only survivor, is in the back of a cop car talking to the sheriff, and the sheriff's like, hey, the guy who died was a good friend of mine, and he told me all about everything that he thought was going on here. It's why he ended up leaving the force. So we're going to put a story together before you talk to anybody. And I really appreciated that. Like that level of just adding a little bit to make it a little bit more real made the story better, in my opinion. Thusly, I upgraded it to a 4 out of 5 for story. Thanks for listening. Okay, thanks, bye.